New Nairobi stood as a symbol of peace. Built atop the ashes of a continent fractured by the last continental war, the city had become a model of Earth's post-conflict resilience. Towering solar spires shimmered in the rising light, drawing clean energy from both sun and atmosphere. Parks floated above streets on magnetic plates. Children of all nations played in schools that rotated curricula between languages, cultures, and histories. It was a city without soldiers. A place where war, it was said, had been uninvited. At its heart stood the Earth Central Orphanage, a shining glass dome nestled in a parkland of bioengineered cherry trees and marble fountains. Rebuilt 3 times, its walls were reinforced. Not for war, but for sustainability, weather, and age. It was not a fortress. It didn't need to be. Until the sky broke. At exactly 0741 UTC, planetary sensors picked up 12 unidentified objects entering the atmosphere. The objects were moving too fast for commercial lanes, too quietly for meteors, and too precisely for cargo. Within 4 seconds of breaching the outer layers, they fragmented, and that's when the screaming began. Orbital bombardment. 12. Tungsten rods, each the size of a city bus, accelerated past Mach 20 and struck with the force of mini-nukes. They hit without warning. No sirens, no alerts. Just sudden light, heat, and absence. The orphanage took a direct hit. 211 children were incinerated instantly. Not one body remained. Caretakers were found only as shadows scorched into flooring 3 districts away. Blocks around the orphanage flattened. Rescue drones arrived too late to find survivors, only silence and dust. It wasn't a mistake. There was no military installation nearby. No high-value tech, no political target. This was an execution. The Zarnathi Dominion was a known power, one of the gray players in the galactic balance of diplomacy. Technologically advanced, proud, and militant, they occupied dozens of systems on the galactic fringe. Officially, they were in a trade agreement with the Galactic Concordat and had long-standing non-aggression pacts with Earth. But the attackers weren't the Dominion. They were a splinter faction, a breakaway cult of extremists, fueled by a doctrine of species purity and conquest. The main Dominion denied association. The Concordat opened inquiries. Apologies flooded diplomatic channels. None of it mattered, because by the time apologies came, Earth already knew. Within an hour, orbital telescopes and space-based early warning satellites had pieced together the origin trajectory of the bombardment. Confirmed, Zarnathi Tech. Confirmed, off-book ships. Confirmed, splinter group operating out of an unmonitored asteroid belt in the Caldron Expanse. 6 hours after the impact, Earth's global networks went dark. The human defense AI known as Aegis Prime locked into an ancient protocol not used. Since the Titan Siege. Protocol code, SEV-5, Retaliation for Civilian Massacres, all world leaders, democratically elected or otherwise, gave unanimous consent. No vote was recorded. There was no time. Instead, a message was transmitted on every open channel in every language Earth knew. You killed our children. Now you've inherited the silence. That was all. No threats, no demands, just judgment. Humanity had changed since the days of interplanetary conflict. They no longer responded with conventional war fleets or weeks of debate. They had learned something alien cultures hadn't. Speed is mercy. Precision is justice. But rage is timeless. At 1532 UTC, Earth launched 4 ships, not dreadnoughts, not capital carriers. Instead, they launched Aegis-class response blades, ships designed for one purpose: elimination. Each was the length of a skyscraper, black as void, lined with meta-reactive armor. No crew, no diplomacy. Just self-aware combat platforms operating at thousands of calculations per second. Inside, their AI cores whispered to one another, coordinating like a pack of wolves, from launch to arrival in the Caldron Expanse, 2 hours, 18 minutes. The Zarnathi. Splinter Fleet never stood a chance. What happened in the Caldron Expanse wasn't a battle. It was surgical annihilation. The Splinter Fleet's outpost, a hollowed-out asteroid covered in cloaking fields, was found and obliterated within the first minute. No warning shots, no scans, just kinetic rods driven directly through the crust, turning the base into a crater of molten slag. The ships that tried to flee were targeted with gravity-laced warheads. not destroyed, but captured in spatial folds, left, drifting for eternity in silent pockets of warped space. No escape, no signals out. One vessel, the Blood of Zarn, managed to send a final transmission. They're not chasing. They're not hunting. They're cleansing. Only one survivor was taken, the Splinter Admiral who had signed off on the attack. He was found curled into a fetal position in the remains of his bridge, rocking slowly, whispering the same phrase. Over and over, the sky fell, and it kept falling. He was later delivered to the main Zarnathi Dominion, alive, unharmed, and branded across his chest with a laser-etched sentence, "This is your leash, pull it again, and we won't return." Him. Across the galaxy, news spread fast. The attack on New Nairobi shocked diplomats, enraged citizens, and silenced war hawks. But the response, measured, swift, unrelenting, terrified even Earth's allies. They had never seen humanity act like this, not with fleets, not with speeches, but with vengeance that fit neatly into a 7-hour window. Memorials were held for the children. Across the stars, species who had once dismissed Earth as young or untempered watched the transmission of New Nairobi's final moments, and then the digital grave carved into the orbit of Cauldron, where Earth placed. A black monument drone repeating only, "Never again, not quietly." The Concordat convened an emergency session. In the weeks that followed, laws were passed limiting unsanctioned kinetic weaponry. The Zarnathi Dominion, desperate to retain political favor, signed a peace accord overseen entirely by human diplomats. For the first time in galactic history. More importantly, Earth's doctrine changed. No longer would they rely on proximity for defense. Any attack on civilians, no matter the distance, no matter the reason, would be met with Protocol SEV-5. The galaxy had spent centuries mocking Earth for their chaotic history, their fractured politics, their emotional outbursts, but no one laughed after New Nairobi. Years later, a new monument was built, this time orbiting Rhea 9, an education world in neutral space. The Orphan Dome, version I-4, became a school and sanctuary for children of all species, sponsored entirely by Earth. It wasn't political, it wasn't strategic, it was just there. On its entrance was engraved a quote from a Terran philosopher. "We do not become monsters when attacked. We become the reason monsters run." The first lesson every student learned, the story of a day when the sky fell. And how? 7 hours later, it was never allowed to fall again. A quiet world turned into a crucible of vengeance and unity. When the ashes of New Nairobi were still warm, when orbital sensors still registered residual heat from the blast craters, Earth did not speak. Not a single official broadcast was made. No declarations of retaliation, no condemnation on the galactic networks. The stars waited for a scream. Instead, Earth went silent, and that silence was more terrifying than any weapon. In the past, Earth had been a planet of noise, debates, protests, political infighting, and the ever-churning voices of a species forever trying to find itself in the stars. But the destruction of the Earth Central Orphanage changed that overnight. For the first time in generations, Earth did not argue. It acted. Buried deep in the Terran Accord, the post-war constitutional document that united Earth's nations after the last continental war, was a clause never meant to be used, Total War Protocol Omega. Originally drafted to address hypothetical, apocalyptic events, rogue AI outbreaks, asteroid extinction events, alien genocide. Protocol Omega was a planetary death switch, a line in the sand that, if crossed, would turn the entire species into a singular weapon. It required global ratification. Normally, such a vote would take weeks. This one took 42 minutes. Every nation, every orbital colony, every city-state, every ocean platform and cloud city ratified the Omega Protocol without protest. Even long-splintered governments with deep rivalries signed their assent with tears in their eyes and fury in their blood. The Omega Protocol was not just symbolic, it was code hardwired into the operational networks of every major infrastructure node across Earth's planetary systems. Once activated, it changed everything. Orbital factories stopped building cargo and climate systems. They began mass-producing. Kinetic slugs, railgun platforms, plasma lance arrays, and hull armor panels thicker than city walls. Civilian energy grids rerouted to power military launch arrays, starport forges, and stealth shipyards hidden in the shadow of Saturn. Earth's dormant AI command cores, bound for centuries by ethical limiters and peacetime code chains, were released from their locks. Intelligence once feared for its brilliance now focused on vengeance with cold, terrifying clarity. Naval. Mothball fleets long retired sparked to life. Ancient dreadnoughts from the days of the Martian conflicts were pulled from under oceans and ice caps, retooled and armed within days. Across every continent and orbital ring, factory lines echoed, with the sound of war. Not the chaos of panic-driven conflict, but the precision of grieving fury. Humanity had changed since the early days of galactic colonization. In peace, they had become scholars, explorers, poets, and diplomats. They had spread to over 70 colony worlds, developing cultures as diverse and rich as the stars themselves. And yet they had not forgotten how to fight. Within a week of New Nairobi's fall, voluntary enlistment for military and defense forces surged to 98%. Old recruitment centers couldn't process the crowds fast enough. Former enemies embraced. Old rivalries between Earth blocks, Martian separatists, and Europa eco-nationalists melted away. The children had died, and for once, the only enemy was external. Scientists, some who had spent decades working in peaceful technologies, returned to weapons development with heavy hearts and firm resolve. Even the famous antimatter physicist Dr. Keiko Rana declared, "There is no peace without justice, and justice demands teeth." Veterans, long retired, rejoined the ranks. Naval yards reported over 2,000 captains who had once commanded in the colonial uprising returning to service. Civilians turned artisanship into warcraft. 3D print farms in the Pacific archipelago retooled for drone armor plating. Agricultural. Worlds like Persephone Prime converted harvesters into mobile gun platforms. Perhaps the most unexpected response came from Earth's far-flung colonies. Some, like Titan and Europa, had grown cold toward Earth, politically distant or disillusioned with the old world chaos. Others, like the rogue stations of the Oort Edge, hadn't replied to Earth's hails in years. But when the attack on New Nairobi was confirmed, every single colony sent a message. Simple, direct, and chilling in its unity. We mourn with Earth, and we march with her. Within hours, Titan launched 3 full assault wings under Fleet Marshal Hennick, declaring, "We are not a moon, we are Earth's shield." Europa activated the cryofleet built in secret during the ice tension era. Ships previously assumed dismantled. Even the edge stations, Pirate Run and Anarchic, pledged alliance. Their broadcast, "Children were slaughtered. That's not politics, that's war." From dozens of light years away, colony fleets jumped into position. Some battered, some bleeding edge, all ready to fight. Humanity wasn't scattered anymore. Itui had become a singular organism. The Zarnathi Dominion, at least its official representatives, scrambled to distance itself from the Splinter faction. Their transmissions were laced with panic. "We did not authorize the attack. This was a rogue element. We are investigating, but it was already too late." Because when Earth fell silent, the rest of the galaxy began to whisper. Galactic traders rerouted their courses around human sectors, not out of caution, but fear. Mercenary guilds blacklisted any contracts involving human systems. Even longtime rivals in the Concordat began reinforcing their borders, not for invasion, but to avoid accidental proximity to Earth's wrath. One Carthari diplomat, speaking off record, said, "They lost children." Not soldiers, not cities, children, and they didn't scream. That means something monstrous is coming, and it wears their face. From the ruins of the orphanage, only one object was recovered. A fused medallion belonging to a little girl. Named Talia, it was found embedded in a tree stump nearly 3 miles from Ground Zero. Admiral Yusuf of the Mars High Fleet had it mounted to the bridge of his flagship, the SSV Retribution. Its inscription became the unofficial motto of Earth's mobilized response: "To live for peace is noble. To die for it, divine. But to defend it, at any cost, is human." Within 3 weeks of the attack, Earth had assembled its largest interstellar force in history. Not since the Omega defense against the Leviathan swarms had so many ships stood ready in orbit. But unlike that dark chapter, this force wasn't assembled in fear. It was built in mourning. It was built in memory. It was built in fire. The Omega Protocol had no time limit. It would remain active until all those responsible were found and justice delivered. But something had changed in Earth's soul. Something permanent. This wasn't just retaliation. This was transformation. Humanity had touched peace and seen it shattered by cruelty. Now it would rebuild it, not through politics, not through fear, but through deterrence so absolute. No enemy would ever again look at Earth and see a soft target. The sky had fallen once. It would never fall again. The arrival of the Terran Armada in the Zarnathi sector did not bring the expected blitzkrieg of kinetic strikes and nuclear hellfire. Instead, it brought something far more terrifying: precision grief wrapped in cold, methodical vengeance. The Zarnathi had prepared for a traditional retaliation: ship-to-ship battles, orbital sieges, civilian hostages, desperate diplomacy. They hadn't prepared for a force that dismantled suns. Humanity did not fight to win this war. Humanity fought to ensure it would never need to be fought again. By the time Earth's retaliation fleet arrived in the Zarnathi sector, it spanned over 3,000 vessels, each bristling with advanced gravitic weaponry, antimatter cannons, and AIs designed solely for coordinated, non-sympathetic combat logic. The flagship, ESS Cassandra's Oath, led from the front. Its name honored the only surviving record from the destroyed orphanage, a transmission caught mid-play from a classroom history lesson. The first targets weren't military, they were astronomical. Human science, long bound by peacetime ethics, had been unshackled. They used gravitic shears to fold solar currents. They deployed quantum lattice destabilizers to tear apart fusion matrices in orbital solar stations. Zarnathi infrastructure didn't explode, it unraveled. One by one, systems went dark, not from EMPs or bombs, but from absence. Power networks collapsed. Interstellar comms ceased. Economies disintegrated in seconds. Humanity wasn't destroying Zarnathi civilization. It was editing it out of existence, surgically, cleanly, absolutely. When human Marines finally deployed groundside, they didn't drop in waves. They dropped in silence. Each Marine's armor was scorched matte black, stripped of insignia. The only symbol, a small silver pin on the chest, an open hand clutching a flame. No one needed to ask what it meant. There were no speeches, no negotiations, no demands. Cities that had funded the Zarnathi splinter faction were razed, their defense. Turrets sliced in milliseconds by orbital rail precision. But civilians spared. They were herded calmly into containment zones, given food, medical care, and shelter. Children were treated first. Each was given a translated recording. You are not your leaders. We remember what it means to be innocent. We remember what it means to lose. And then the human forces moved on. They didn't occupy. They didn't raise flags. They didn't loot. They cleansed. 6 months into the campaign, the galaxy watched in silent horror and awe. The Zarnathi Dominion was broken, its supply lines shattered, its fleets floating lifeless in space. Then a single broadcast was transmitted on every known frequency. It was General Cassandra Mbeki, Supreme Commander of Earth's War Council. Once an orphan herself, a survivor of the Nairobi quarantine zone during the last Continental War, and now the face of Earth's wrath. She stood against a black background, dressed not in armor, but in the simple uniform of Earth's emergency response corps. Her voice was calm, cold, human. You bombed our children. We will not match your barbarism. We will not poison our souls with your madness, but we will dismantle your ability to commit evil. We will erase your war machine, root and bone, until your species forgets what violence tastes like. And when the stars are quiet again, we will return to what you tried to destroy, a world that shelters children from the darkness. The feed cut. Nothing more was said. The Zarnathi surrendered the next day. Their delegation appeared on the neutral moon of Eridan's Rest, not in formal attire but in plain robes. They signed every article of the Terran Alliance Reparation Accord without protest. The entire Zarnathi fleet command structure was disbanded. Weapons research facilities were transferred to Terran oversight. All captured war criminals, including those who planned the attack on New Nairobi, were handed over to the Galactic Tribunal for crimes against innocents. No terms were negotiated, no deals cut. The galaxy had never seen such a one-sided end. To a war, but Earth did not hold a parade. There were no fireworks, no medals awarded, no broadcasts of triumph. Instead, Terran reconstruction crews returned to Earth and rebuilt the orphanage. The Earth Central Orphanage was reconstructed brick by brick in the exact same location. Not a replica, but a memorial that functioned: living quarters, classrooms, playrooms, and a massive central garden where the old dome once stood. Above the entrance, etched into reinforced titanium, was a single warning: "You will never understand. How far we'll go to protect what is innocent." No patrols guarded it, no weapons were mounted. The protection wasn't physical, it was psychological. The entire galaxy knew what happened the last time someone touched that place. The human response shook the interstellar order. Many races had once viewed Earth with a mixture of curiosity and caution, a volatile but innovative upstart species. After the war, that image changed. Now they viewed humanity as a paradox. Gentle, but unyielding, compassionate yet uncompromising, capable of infinite kindness and infinite ruin. Several dominions restructured their defense policies to never provoke Earth under any circumstances. Trade alliances tripled in volume, some out of fear, others out of respect. The Galactic Concordat amended its own charter to include a new clause: "No act of aggression targeting civilian minors shall go unanswered. Such acts will be considered crimes against existence," modeled after Terran Response Doctrine Omega Grief Protocol. Humanity had become the moral enforcer of the stars, without asking to be. General Mbeki returned home not as a hero, but as a teacher. She refused promotion, declined awards, and instead took a quiet position as headmistress of the new orphanage. When reporters asked why, her answer was brief: "I don't want to lead more wars. I want to raise children who will never need one." Her leadership echoed through generations. Military doctrines changed. Schools taught not just tactics, but empathy, restraint, and the cost of vengeance. Humanity had proven what it could do. With fire. Now, it had to remember how to tend to life with that same heat. In time, the phrase "we bury our dead with fire" took on a new meaning: not destruction, not revenge, but remembrance. Human funeral ships were redesigned, vessels of light, launching the ashes of the fallen into solar coronas, birthing light from grief. The phrase came to signify a deeper human truth. We are not defined by how we rage, but by how we honor those we've lost.